Ford has just passed General Motors in market cap, and one car has essentially saved the company for the time being. That is the Ford F150 Lightning electric vehicle. With over 200,000 pre-orders, Ford's stock price has had an incredible resurgence. But there was another car that saved Ford back in 1985. And here is what that was. Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Electric Viking. Fantastic to have you here on the channel. My name is Sam Evans, and I'm coming to you here from Melbourne, Australia. Hope you had an awesome 2021, and 2022 is going to be even better, especially for Ford, who have had a big change of heart, big change of mind when it comes to electrification. Clearly, Jim Farley, as their CEO, is making the right moves. Now, in 1985, the Ford Motor Company introduced a new mid-size sedan, the 1986 Ford Taurus, along with its identical cousin, the Mercury Sable. More than 8 million Tauruses would follow during the next 34 years, making it Ford's fifth best-selling North American nameplate after the Ford F150, the Escort, the Model T, and the Mustang. Now, the Taurus's cutting-edge aerodynamic shape came at a time when cars boasted boxy knife-edge design. Powered by a 140 horsepower 3-litre V6, it was Ford's first front-wheel drive mid-size sedan. What did it cost? Well, it started at $9,645 and it proved to be a triumph. A car that actually saved the company from bankruptcy. Yet ironically, the company squandered that success, allowing the once loved nameplate to wither into irrelevance. Now the story of the Ford Taurus is quite an interesting one, and it began in troubled times for Ford. High interest rates significantly depressed car sales, particularly larger cars, thanks to a second oil embargo, had significantly changed market conditions. Other factors were depressing demand as well. In particular, negative publicity regarding the Ford Pintos, which suffered from a poorly designed fuel tank that ruptured when hit from behind, causing Ford cars to catch fire like never before. US sales for Ford plummeted by 33%, and international sales decreased by a massive 26%. Subsequently, Ford lost $1.5 billion that year alone. And this was the beginning of a 3-year stretch that saw the company lose $3.2 billion US. So Ford made a gamble. Ford President Donald Peterson knew something had to be done. Now, having spent his career in product planning, he knew Ford needed to break the habit of following in the shadow of General Motors' design and eschew the inoffensive boxy designs the company had long produced, which were now getting dated. So he drove to the Ford Design Dome, asked the designers if they liked the car that they'd actually want to drive home. So he drove to the Ford Design Dome and asked the designers if they liked the car they were creating. When they said no, Peterson told them to draw cars that they'd actually want to drive home. Now, apparently they were shocked by this, as nothing like this had ever happened in the industry before. No one had been given any real design freedom. And this was not a whim. Designer Jack Telnack and Team Taurus chief Lou Veraldi were given the opportunity to stretch beyond the typical Ford look by company CEO Philip Caldwell, who had recently replaced Henry Ford II. Caldwell would periodically check in, asking the team, "Have you gone far enough?" Now, Caldwell actually trusted Telnack and Veraldi. They had created the first Ford Fiesta in Europe when Caldwell was its chief. Now, though, they were entrusted with a $3 billion program, a program that would either make or break Ford Motor Company. Veraldi said to his friends, "Phil Caldwell has trusted me with the very last $3 billion that Ford Motor Company has." Now, to hedge its bets, Ford continued production of the mid-size Ford LTD, which was based on the old Ford Granada, what I like to call the Ford Grandpa. But Ford needed the Taurus to succeed. If it didn't succeed, the company would have to file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. That was where the company was at in 1985. Luckily for Ford, the Taurus arrived with critical acclaim. What they created was a mid-sized sedan with sleek aerodynamic styling that looked European, not American. And it looked unlike any car Detroit was producing at that time. But the styling gamble turned out to be a huge success for Ford, winning Motor Trend's coveted Car of the Year, despite other CEOs sniping its styling. One of those CEOs was Chrysler's CEO and former Ford president Lee Iacocca, who said the Taurus resembled a flying potato. But regardless of this criticism, the Taurus sales kept on growing year after year after year, helping Ford's US market share grow from 19.2% in 1985 to 22.3% in 1989. Eventually, the Taurus would become the best-selling car in America, receiving a modest facelift in 1992. 4 years later, it would be completely redesigned. Now, Ford actually benchmarked the Toyota Camry, which had been redesigned for 1992 by the team that had created the first Lexus LS sedan, which I believe is a bit of a classic car, by the way. Built to a higher standard than its market segment required, Ford engineers were impressed. They used it as a guide for the new Taurus. And then along came 1996. A radically rounded 1996 styling redesign missed the mark. Customers didn't like it and decided they weren't interested in buying the Ford Taurus anymore. Consumers didn't find the car appealing, and the cost to build it proved to be too high, especially after Ford used $2,000 rebates to ensure its continued popularity as America's best-selling car in 1996. But the following year, the Toyota Camry was redesigned with much of the cost taken out of it. So Toyota did it the smart way. They reduced costs. Subsequently, they lowered prices for the Toyota Camry and it displaced the Taurus as America's favorite car. Just behind it in second place was the Honda Accord. The Taurus placed third. America's love affair with the car was over, and it seemed as though America had moved on from American cars to Japanese cars. Now, Ford from then on didn't show a lot of interest in the Taurus and did little to improve it, allowing it to languish until it was killed off for good in 2006, squandering 20 years and hundreds of millions of dollars in brand equity. But the Taurus actually made a return in 2008 when Ford renamed its slow-selling 500 full-size sedan the Taurus during a mid-cycle refresh. It would get a more extensive redesign in 2010 using the same platform. But America's love affair with full-size sedans was waning, and for 2019, the Taurus would be axed yet again. The vehicle never recovered from its disastrous 1996 redesign on its decade of neglect. But the Ford Taurus will always be remembered for changing the course of American car design, wrenching the style lead from General Motors while saving Ford Motor Company from bankruptcy in the process. Now, in 2021, Ford had been languishing for a while with enormous debts, and its future looked incredibly bad. At the start of this year, I predicted there was a good chance Ford would go bankrupt. But then they made a big move. They advertised the Ford F150 Lightning electric pickup and received more than 200,000 pre-orders. At the same time, the Mustang Mach E electric vehicle rejuvenated Ford's image in the minds of buyers. And now at the end of 2021 or the beginning of 2022, it looks as though Ford, with its upcoming multi-billion-dollar investments in electric battery factories and electric car factories, is poised for a decade of growth to come. Thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you again on the next one. Bye-bye.